Hi everybody. So far in the revision process, we've looked at how you can make your introduction more engaging, how you can add descriptive language to your story, and also yesterday we looked at how you can add dialogue to your story. Today we're going to focus on thinking about how you can show how you feel about a character or a situation in your personal narrative. And if you remember when we talked about tone a couple of weeks ago, this is just what tone is. So in your personal narrative, your tone is really how you feel or your attitude towards what happened to you, towards your meaningful personal experience. And that is what you have to show the reader. Now, as your story develops, your tone will change. Just like in real life, you're not the same. You don't feel the same way about things at all points in your life. So the same in your story. Okay, so your tone at the beginning of your story will probably be different to how it is in the middle and how it is at the end of your story. So let's look at my example. So if you remember Mr. Wick's tragic love story, at the beginning of my story, I'm asking this girl out on a date. I'm unsure if she's going to say yes. So my tone, how I feel about the situation, is that I'm anxious. Okay, so when I do my story, I have to think about how can I show that I'm anxious at the beginning, at the exposition of this story. And then as we get towards the climax, right, so I've asked her out on a date. She said yes, we've gone out on a date, but then I fought with my best friend. Angela dumps me. So at the climax of my story, I'm no longer anxious anymore. My tone has changed, and it's changed to a depressed tone. I'm really sad about what's happened. And then as we get towards the end of my story, you remember Angela starts dating my former best friend, and at the end, they stop dating, they go to different schools, and I change. Okay, so I don't date for a long time. I get more interested in books, whatever, reading. So I become distant. Again, my tone has changed. I'm no longer depressed about this particular climactic moment. Now my tone is more of a distant tone. And I would have to show that again in my story. So how do you add tone to your personal narrative? Well, the first thing you have to do is identify the tone in particular plot points in your story. And I suggest that you focus on these three: exposition, so right at the beginning; climax, which should be somewhere in the middle of your story; and lastly, resolution, which should come out somewhere near the end. Okay, so once you've identified your tone in those particular points, then you've got to think about how can you show that tone to the reader. And there's really two main ways you can do this. The first way is to show it through words. Okay, so use the emotion words resource that I provided you. Think about how you can show, for example, if your tone is happy, what words could you use to suggest that you're happy? And we've got a list here on the page. You could say you were overjoyed, you could say you were delighted. And that lets the reader know how you're feeling. The other main way in which you can show your tone is by action. So we'll be talking a little bit more about this tomorrow, but instead of saying, for example, that you're anxious, okay, you could show through action that you're anxious. So one of the things we do when we're worried, for example, what I do, is biting our fingernails, okay? So instead of saying, I'm anxious, you could show that by saying, I bit my fingernails. And then the reader can infer that you're actually anxious. So for the extra credit Padlet, I want you to think about this image I have on the screen here. Okay, and I want you to think about if this person is you, describe how you are feeling in this scene, right? Using words or action. Be creative.